All right, we want to turn now to the tariff threats south of the border. Canada's premiers made some inroads with White House officials during their joint mission to Washington this week.
Both sides have to take a diplomatic approach. They have to listen. The worst thing that could happen to American citizens and Canadian citizens, that it turns out to a full-out tariff war. It'd be terrible. Both sides.
So the premiers, we know, presented a united front to one of U.S. President Donald Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff Jim Blair. This final push followed days of diplomatic conversations with Republicans, industry leaders about the need for a strong Canada-U.S. trade relationship. For more on the joint premier's mission, I am joined by Laurie Turnbull, Associate Professor of Political Science at Dalhousie University. Great to have you back, Laurie. Listen, at the end of the day, after all of that travel and all of the speeches and all of the meetings, how effective was this trip down to Washington for the premiers?
Well, it sounds like the meetings were productive, constructive. Constructive is the word that a lot of people seem to be using. It sounds like,
which is different than productive.
It is, yeah. I think my brain was trying to be too optimistic there. Constructive, right? So I think I take that to mean dialogue is open. No negativity, no harsh words exchanged here. Nobody's closing any doors, and I do think that is really important because we're still in this period where Trump has signed an order that says tariffs will go on steel and aluminum by March 12th, but that's not here yet, right? So there's still a stretch where it's worth talking because even the last time we thought for sure that tariffs were coming on that Tuesday, on Monday he changed his mind. And so the unpredictability, as miserable as it is, can give us some room to maneuver. And so, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's no change in anything. It sounds like everything's still a go as far as the plan for tariffs.
Well, and Laurie, I know the conversations you're having have probably had the same kind of output as the ones we're having, which is that at the end of the day, no matter how high the official, they will always say it depends what the president wants. So then it becomes important of which pipelines are getting to the president. It seems like the goalposts are changing all the time. It's tough for the premiers to know which arguments to put forward that will have the most impact. Which were the ones that they decided would hit the agenda in Washington?
Okay, so I think clearly Premier Ford, for example, really wants to drive home the point that a tariff war, especially one that escalated and became broader, right, and more inclusive, would be really bad for everybody. So I think Ford's push from day one, as even like way back, right, when he initially got these ad buys down in the U.S. and he was going down on Fox and CNN, which he still does, his point was to really make Americans understand that a tariff war was going to hurt them as much as it would hurt us, and that this was not a good way to handle the affordability crisis. And I think the push for him has always been to see if he can convince people on that side of the border so that they would be able to do the work to convince Trump. I think other points were made around the fact that we've now put in place a fentanyl czar. We are attentive to President Trump's concerns about the flow of fentanyl at the border. Premier Eby from British Columbia made that point. So these pressure points were pushed on, and I think fair enough, right? But I'm not sure that it got anywhere. And I don't know how much they really expected that it would. I think it's more keeping those lines of communication open.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of lines of communication, the conversation I think that probably is likely to have the most impact at the White House in the Oval Office is the one that Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc had in Washington. He met with U.S. President's Commerce Secretary nominee. Here's what he said out of that meeting.
I certainly raised with them the solidarity that we've seen across the country in terms of meeting this moment in a way that protects the sovereignty of Canada and protects our economic interests.
So he, repeated the line about sovereignty. He repeated the line about protecting our interests. But do we know if anything more came out of that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with the point that everybody in the whole system is going to say, look, it depends on what Trump is going to do. And that includes people who are quite high up in the ranks and are, direct appointees of Trump, like Letnick. So I think, from Minister LeBlanc's perspective, I completely get what he's saying, right? Like pushing that point that Canada is a sovereign nation, that's not going to change. That goes right to the comments that President Trump has made about Canada potentially becoming a 51st state. And I think it was last Friday, all the days seem so long now, but I think it was last Friday when the Prime Minister made, this acknowledgement that Trump is serious when he says that. So I think the fact that that has come through to Canadians means that when we send these delegations, when the premiers go, when ministers go, they have to push this point that Canada is not going to become the 51st state. And so keeping that in the mix of the conversation is important.
Yeah, and it speaks to the importance of the fact that that's one of the points that Dominic Lalonde brought up in his conversation is that's a no-go for us, 51st state, negotiate on the other points. Laurie Turnbull, Associate Professor of Political Science at Dalhousie University. Great to have you with us, and you're right, it has been an intense week, so thanks for following it for us.
Thank you, too. Take care.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.